reading corner, and no matter where my mom put the furniture, that's where I read. And I never realized how bizarre I must have looked sitting underneath tables until I was an adult. And I'm like, okay, that's really weird. But that was my favorite place to read, and I read all the time. I was the kind of kid that, kind of a nerd, if I go into like a sleepover, I would think, oh, I wonder if there's going to be a time during the night that I can read because my book is really good. Another reason why I probably became a writer is I had a very busy family. I know Becky has a very busy family with 4 children. Who else has a very busy family? You guys are always going? Do you guys always have lots of things going on? Well, here is me when I was 5 years old. My mom made this dress. I have no idea how she had time to sew as well. My Aunt Michelle lived with us because my grandparents passed away when she was a teenager, so she had to move in with her big brother, who's my dad. There's my sister Maureen, my brother Joe, in some lovely plaid pants, and then my brother Tommy, who had special needs. So I have no idea why my mom is smiling. If I had this, it's like, Becky, I don't know why you're smiling all the time. My dad looks a little stunned, like, how did this happen? But so when you have a really busy family, you have to like get attention. And so being just stuck in the middle of them, I was always the one telling funny stories and trying to, look at me and trying to keep their attention. So, and it's a really good thing that I did have such a good sense of humor because this was me in 3rd grade. As you can tell, I do not have naturally curly hair, but my aunt, who was a teenager, who was so cool because she wasn't my sister and she was actually really nice to me, she did have naturally curly hair, and I wanted to be her. So my mom took me to a beauty school, and I think the lady maybe flunked because this is the perm she gave me. But I thought I looked awesome. I was rocking the fro. I had the pick, and I'd make it really big, and I'd go to school, and I'm sure I was being made fun of, but I was like, look at me. I am rocking it. And this is me, but I didn't really know I wanted to be a writer until I was in 7th grade. And I'm in 7th grade because I have a pimple, and it's mandatory. My children always wanted to get, like, nowadays you can, have your pictures touched up, your school pictures. I'm like, no, then they won't know you were in 7th grade unless you have the big pimple on your face. When I was like Wendy, I was not pegged for greatness at an early age. My parents would go to conferences, and the teachers would say, yeah, Eileen's, a pretty good student, but she sure does talk a lot. Did any of you guys have conferences like that where Wendy already showed us her report card. I was, a good B student and really interested in social activities. Actually, in high school, I put on my college application that I was in charge of social activities for the senior class, which just meant that I had a lot of parties at my house. I kind of made up an award for myself. But when I was in 7th grade, my teacher, writing teacher, saw that I was very creative, and she signed me up for a writer's conference. And normally only kids that were in gifted education went to this. So I was like, really, me? And she said, yes, you're a really good writer. You are really bad at grammar, but you're a really good writer. And so when somebody tells you that you're really good at something, doesn't it make you just feel good about yourself? Like, wow, you're really good at the trombone, and you just want to play the trombone all the time. Or, wow, you run really fast. Okay, I'm going to join the track team. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm a writer. So in high school, I was like editor of my high school yearbook. This is me in high school, still sitting in the exact same reading corner. I went to Assumption High School in Davenport, so hence the plaid skirt. I wasn't that fashion behind. And then I became a teacher. And this was my first classroom in Waterloo, Iowa, 1,000,000 years ago. And I was a horrible, rotten teacher who actually made her students read and write all the time. And one day, then I moved to Urbandale, Iowa, and I taught 7th grade. And I told them they had to write a book. And when 7th graders, any of you guys live with a teenager? Anybody here have a teenager in the house? They like to whine a lot, don't they? Yeah, and so my 7th graders all said, what, Mrs. Boggess? We have so much to do. We can't do that. And I said, oh my gosh, quit whining. I will write one with you. And we've been talking about how people get ideas. And literally, I was standing in front of my 7th graders, and I was like, all right, I'm going to have a kid. She's really shy. She doesn't want to be shy anymore. She wants to be popular. Funny things are going to happen. And I thought of that idea right then. And my students all finished their books, and I kept on writing. And I was having so much fun. I didn't even really think about getting published or anything like that. I just was like, I'm having a ball. And I was in my late 30s, so it was, or I guess mid-30s, so I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up again until I was in my mid-30s. But when I finished it, I thought my book was awesome. And I'm like, well, I'm going to become rich and famous, and J.K. Rowling and I are going to be besties, and we'll have castles side by side. This is awesome. So I didn't know anything at all about the publishing world, and I sent my book out. And you guys think that I got it accepted right away? No, if anybody believes that, so I sent it to a bunch of editors and agents. I got 38 rejection letters back. But not unlike Wendy, I guess I must just be hard-headed. I just kept with it. And I joined the SCBWI, which Becky, Wendy, and Vale's in here. In the SCBWI, Cheryl is as well. I joined a writers group. Oh, Society of Children Book Writers and Illustrators. So if you want to write, join that group, because you get to hang out with really fun people. I joined a writers group. Cheryl, who presented before, is in my writers group. Becky Yanni's in my writers group as well. I revised, and then I started getting positive rejection letters. Have anybody ever heard of the term jumbo shrimp? That kind of, doesn't really make sense, does it? Because it's two opposite words together. And that's what a positive rejection letter is. It's back, now I don't think editors send these anymore. Now they just they ignore you. But they would say, Dear Eileen, your book doesn't totally stink. It just isn't quite right for us. But it made me feel good. I'm like, I got a positive rejection letter today. And then one day I got a letter in the mail from an intern that said, hey, I really like your book. And I didn't remember that I had sent it to that publishing house. But they published Mia the Meek, Mia the Melodramatic, and Mia the Magnificent. Yeah, pretty cool. So every year, editors get 15,000 books that they don't ask for. Nobody asked me to write my book. Nobody was like, hey, you're famous. Will you write this book, this children's book, and then go on all the talk shows where all the regular authors we all hate those people. So you have to have a great opening line. So I don't know. Normally I do this with students, but we have a lot of children's book authors here. So you guys are going to be put to the test here. In order to get an editor's attention, you have to have a great opening line, because the average editor will give you 3 seconds of their time before they decide if they're not going to publish you. Because if you had to read all that, can you imagine if you had to read all those papers on there? Would you read all of them? No, you'd only read just a little bit and then say, okay, I'm moving on to the next. So I'm going to read an opening line from a book, and I'm going to see if you guys can tell me what it is. All right? Let's see how smart you are. Where's Papa going with that axe, said Fern to her mother as they were setting the table for breakfast. Right in the red shirt. What book is that? It is Charlotte's Web. Now, just think about it. If you're at your breakfast table and your dad walks by with an axe, does that happen all the time? No, that would be really weird. You might need to talk to somebody if your dad walks by with an axe, because you might, maybe he does cut his toast really, really well. I'm not sure, but most of the time, if you're sitting at your breakfast table and your dad walks by with an axe, you might go, what's going on here? And it turns out the dad's not an axe murderer. He is actually a farmer and going to go kill the runt pig. But it catches your attention. Does he kill the runt pig? No. Who saves the runt pig? Charlotte. Okay. All children except one grow up. Who doesn't grow up? Somebody just mentioned him earlier. Right here, you can answer. Peter Pan. Peter Pan doesn't grow up. Now, that's kind of a crazy statement. If you read that and you're like, what does that even mean? All children except one grow up? That doesn't even make sense. Editors like that. They like that. What does that mean? And it catches somebody's attention. So when you're starting a story, you can start it off with kind of a crazy statement. Sometimes I wonder if my mom is brain dead. Does anybody know this one? It's a newer book. My niece Megan, who's in 4th grade, is devouring them. The Dork Diaries. Has anybody read the Dork Diaries yet around here? So anyway, she loves that. And I thought that is a pretty good opening line because it's funny. You know that it's going to be a funny book by then. Or her, I don't know, sassy. She's sassy. If you're interested in reading stories with happy endings, you would be better off reading some other book. Yep, I know what you're thinking. It is Lemony Snicket. And so let's say if you're really full, you just ate lunch, but you come home and your mom says to you, whatever you do not eat the last cookie in the cookie jar. What do you want to do? Eat the last cookie. It's human nature. So he keeps on saying, stop reading. If you know what's good for you, don't read another word. You're not, it'll only bring you misery and woe. Stop reading. So what do you want to do? You keep reading, because you're like, I too can handle this. Don't you be telling me I can't. There is no lake at Camp Green Lake. Someone yell it out. Holes, which is the perfect book, and that pretty much sums up the entire book. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. All right, I'll go back to the red shirt. It is Harry Potter. Now, do perfectly normal people try and convince you how normal they are? No, it's weird people that go around saying, I'm really normal. I swear I'm really normal. So by them starting the story off this way, they're probably the kind of people that hide their nephew in a closet under the stairs, which isn't very nice and not very normal either. First of all, let me get something straight. This is a journal, not a diary. Yes, it is Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and that is, you can tell just by that how funny that book's going to be and how perfect voice. If anybody ever talks about voice to you, like you want to grab he's perfect voice. Okay, so I'm trying to think of how long we have. Okay, I'm just going to, so after you have a great opening line, then you have to have a lot of conflict, and I'm going to I think I'm going to skip over so that we have time for the questions. We're going to move on to this. Okay, so you have a great opening line. You have a lot of bad things happen to your characters. Now you need to have important characters. Characters, you hang out with them no matter what they're doing. Your main character has to be somebody that if they called you up and they said, hey, do you want to go to the town dump? You would say, of course I want to go to the town dump. That would be so fun. Do you guys have anybody who, no matter what you do with them, it's really, really fun? You can do just the most boring thing, but they make you laugh really, really hard. That's what you want your main character. So that, Harry Potter, he does a lot of stuff. And you want to hang out with him because he's a good guy. They're out of the ordinary. They're not people that just sit around and do nothing. They're, wizards, or they're just very smart, or they're bicycle cowgirls, and they like to do all kinds of different things. They embrace life, like Harry Potter. If they would have said, hey, do you want to, be in this, tournament or whatever, play some Quidditch? And he's like, I think I'm going to lay around and play video games. I mean, that would not be very fun. They say things we'd like to say but don't. Has any of you ever had, where somebody said something to you and you come up with a perfect comeback 2 days later? Has that ever happened to you? And you want to call that person and be like, well, yeah, but you can't really do that because that would be weird. But as a writer, that's the best thing, is that I get to write something, and then the next day I can go back and be like, oh, yeah, no, I'd rather have them say this. And then, another day you're like, no, this is what they're going to say. So your characters get to seem really, really smart. It's because you have a lot of time to think of what you want them to say. Kind of like Junie B. Jones. Do any of you guys know Junie B. Jones? Some of the things she says are pretty funny. But if any kid really said those in school, they probably would get in a lot of trouble. But it's very fun to think of being able to say those kind of crazy things. All right, I'm going to test you guys again with more famous characters. And Aunt Em, I'm so glad to be home again. What presentation was talking about this? Yes, Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Now, The Wizard of Oz is filled with larger-than-life characters. There's a Tin Man, there's a Scarecrow. Who else is in The Wizard of Oz? lion, the wizard, the witches. There's all kinds of things. And Dorothy, does she embrace life? When Dorothy lands in Oz, does she say, all right, guess I'm just going to, live here now? No, she was, I'm going back. And she doesn't have anybody else solve her problems. She solves her own problems. And she's so brave that she's like, hey, there's a talking scarecrow. Come along with me. Here's a guy made of tin. You come. Oh, a lion. She embraces life. She's out of the ordinary, and she makes things happen with a little help from a bucket of water. Oh, my goodness. The older ones will know this. For some of you guys, when I was younger, I scared my mother to death, the things I would blurt out about District 12, the people of our country, Panem, and the far-off city of the capital. Say it loud, Becky. Hunger Games, which is now, in that book, since there's little ones here, but when the people first told me the premise of that, I was like, I will never read that book. That is awful. But then I read it, and it was like, wow, this is an awesome book. Oh, and also, this is also for older kids. It's about vampires. It's Twilight, which is crazy. Oh, I don't know if any of the kids will know this one or not. Maybe the girl in the yellow, you might have to read it for school. In measured time, 47 days had passed since the crash. 42 days, he thought, since he had died and been born as the new Brian. Do we know that one? It is Gary Paulson, Hatchet. And Hatchet, it sounds like it'd be a boy book, but it's really good. Poor Brian, he's like kind of a chubby middle grade kid, and he's going to visit his mom and dad on a plane, and his dad gives him a hatchet, which is very convenient, as a birthday gift, and the pilot has a heart attack and dies while he's in the plane, and the plane crashes, and all he has is a hatchet. And so this kid, who's just this average kid, has to figure out how to survive in the Canadian wilderness. And he has a lot of misadventures along the way, but he does survive just with this. And it is a great book about an ordinary, normal kid. His parents are divorced, he's in a plane, and then an extraordinary thing happens to him, and you're like, this is awesome. So I recommend it. And this one, I don't know if you guys will know, but it's my favorite character of all time. At school, they say I'm wired bad or wired mad or wired sad or wired glad, depending on my mood and what teacher has me. But there is no doubt about it. I am wired. What? Who said it? It's Joey Pigza, swallowed the key. Now, this kid, Joey has ADHD, and he doesn't have good meds for it right now. And in the first chapter, you'll read it and you'll want to take a nap because it goes just like that. And then I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and you're just like, and he has such a good heart, and he doesn't mean to cut the girl's nose off with the scissors. It just happens, and he picks it up and he sticks it back on her face, but it just won't stick. He tries, and when he's swallowing the key, he actually has a key around his neck because he has to let himself in at home at the end of the day, and he swallows the key, and then he brings it back up, and then he swallows the key, and he brings it back up. And if you did that, well, your teacher probably would. So the teacher cut the string, was like, that's enough, Joey. Well, Joey forgets a few minutes later, and he swallows the key, and then he realizes he can't bring it back up, and so it has to come out a whole different way. So Joey, he's just a good kid, and you just love him to death. But sometimes. So don't try that at home. Okay, and we are just going to really quick, I'm going to teach you guys, as a group, we're going to do a story. The best way, if you think about building a story, it's a fairy tale. There's a beginning, something terrible happens, things happen in 3, and then there's a conclusion. So like the 3 Little Pigs, there's a beginning. What happens at the very beginning of the 3 Little Pigs? Exactly. At the very beginning, as all good mothers do, she kicks her pigs out when they're grown up. And she says, I'm tired of feeding you pigs. So then they have to go and they build their houses. And then something terrible happens. What's the terrible thing that happens in the 3 Little Pigs? Excellent. You are right. And then things happen in 3. Who's the first house he blows down? You guys can all yell it out. Straw. And then he does sticks. And then he does bricks. And then at the end of it, then it all comes together, and then they all live in the nice Disney version. The pig runs in the woods, and they all live happily ever after. So I'm going to give you guys a beginning, and the beginning is the king dies. So I'm really sorry. He dies before we even got to know him. And then there's an immediate consequence. It's like in the pigs, the mother kicks them out. The immediate consequence is they have to build houses. The king dies, and so the queen, what happens? What does the queen have to do? Anybody raise their hand? There's no wrong answer. You should see how crazy some of these stories get with my students. Yes, the queen dies, or the king dies. So the queen, what does she do? Yes, what does she do? You don't know? All right, what do you think the queen does? Oh, so the queen says, no, you didn't. And so she goes after the guy who killed her husband. And then something terrible happens. What's the something terrible that happens? Yes, in the red shirt. Okay, so the queen goes after the guy that kills the king, and then there's a fire? Oh, a big wave comes and swallows up the whole kingdom? Or just her? Just her. Okay. So then a big tidal wave comes and takes the queen and washes her away. And what's the story going to be? Maybe the story will be about how the queen finds her way back. Does that sound like a good thing since we're running short on time? Okay. So the king dies. The queen goes and she's going to get the guy who killed her husband. But instead, a huge tidal wave comes, washes her away. And then what happens while she's trying to get back? One thing that happens. Come on, you writers. Let's come up with something. Come on, Wendy. All right, what happens? A giant what comes? An orc? Oh, my goodness. A giant orc comes. I don't even know what an orc is. What is that? It's Lord of the Rings. Oh, my goodness. All right. So a giant orc comes. So you guys are going to have to finish the story because I don't even know what that is. Giant orc comes, and then what happens? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to buy your next book. That is awesome because you are a writer. I know that. So the orc comes, chases after the queen, puts her in a dungeon. So now she's in a dungeon filled with cobwebs. And then what happens? And what? And spiders. Because, yeah, you can't have cobwebs without the spiders. Yes. And then what happens? Maybe then, because we are ending the story because we have to draw prizes, maybe it squeezes her so tight and maybe it pops her back to the kingdom? Yeah. That sounds like a good one. All right, and then you give me the ending. And so what happens? The queen is back at the kingdom, and then what happens? The queen falls in love with the orc. Oh, and they all live happily ever after. That was perfect. You guys are so awesome. Okay, so I think I have like 30 seconds. Does anybody have one question, and then we'll draw the prizes? One question, okay. Does everybody get and 2 people. Did you sign up for it? Okay, so we'll see. I'm drawing the names.
Actually, this session we have 3 prizes.
Oh, lucky.
So, but first, can we give Eileen Boggess a round of applause?